Bleach Revisited. I am Ikkaku Gold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing critical analysis of the art and narrative, as well as personal response to each of these chapters. We'll also be discussing how this chapter connects to the other chapters in the series, the entire manga as a whole, so there will be discussion of foreshadowing and spoilers. As usual, we begin these videos with a reading of the chapter that we are discussing for the day. This is Bleach, Ch.88. So unlucky we are. I won't be able to hold my weapon. You talk big, Ichigo. But what is the basis for your confidence? You're too slow. Ah! What's wrong? Maybe you were all talk. Ozakimaru's attacks are difficult to read. They can confound a novice like yourself. I don't think so. My eyes are already used to your moves. What? My Ozakimaru? With his bare hand? I'll say it again, Ikkaku. What speed? It's you who won't be able to hold your weapon. What? Already finished. Unfortunately for you, I can still hold my weapon. If you don't want me to hold a weapon, you'd better cut off my arms. Put that thing away. I refuse. I said put it away. The fight's over. You know it. You've lost. Stop wasting your breath. This is a battle. It will only end when one of us is dead. Ikkaku Madarame was not born a coward that would surrender to escape death. You're too slow. Wow, you're good. So unlucky. We're both unlucky. And the main character is Ikkaku Gold, also known as the natural-born hero, Don Kanonji Gold! That is it for Bleach Revisited. Words. Bleach Revisited, episode and chapter 88, right? That's all that we have. I usually say that's it for chapter, like whatever the chapter is. I don't say Bleach Revisited there. I think it's probably why I jumbled myself. My brain realized that's not what I do. That's not what I say. But that's it for today's reading. Let's get right into talking about the art, talking about the kind of narrative happening here. Of course, this is a very battle-heavy chapter, a lot more focused on the action and the choreography, so our discussion will probably be more focused there. That said, you can probably tell the reading is shorter than usual. Typically, these readings are about 5-6 minutes, depending. This one was closer to 3, and that's because we just had a lot of action. You can probably read this chapter on your own in like less than a minute, which, in my opinion, to talk about personal response a little up front, that for me is kind of peak Bleach. That it has immediate readability, that it's quick, that it doesn't do you with dialogue, that it keeps its exposition visual rather than textual. Now, yeah, a good manga is going to marry both of those elements, but manga is first and foremost a visual form. And so it's important that, at least for me, that a manga actualize that visual form and make use of it, and I feel that Bleach always does. I will say, dude, I love this chapter cover. Just like skateboard and Ichigo, pretty cool. I like the 88 and the shadow. That's really good stuff. Just Ichigo looking clean. You know, I like the drawing of Ichigo a lot. Again, you see here, I mentioned this before, but Kubo really like having a lot of fun with these just full blacks for the shading. We get that there on the other side of the face. We catch it down like the body, but we also are getting it on the insides of the hands, which is something that we don't often see from Kubo. And again, getting to see this little bit, like the chunk of the palm closer to the thumb, just really, really well done overall. And I love like just the sharp outline reminds me of some real like it's the skater sort of thing already, but it's reminding me of, like stickers of like things like that. This would make a great sticker, I think. Also, my cat says that it also would make a great sticker, so we're all in agreement here. I love that we come back into the chapter. We just have this demolished wall that Ichigo already cut in half, and he can destroy that. Certainly, he can destroy Ikkaku. But again, remember, this doesn't follow the physical rules of our world. These are spiritual bodies. Their bodies are able to withhold or withstand things that maybe structures won't. So, in Bleach, I think that's like one of the things that a lot of people start to mess up or have problems with or whatever. I don't know. They'll be like, oh, well, he can cut this building in half, right? So surely he can cut this person in half. And it's like, well, they're actually all just reishi constructs. So it's not like he's cutting through steel or anything like that. It's just that the power of his spiritual energy was sharper, more capable of, destroying this other, amalgamation of spiritual particles, right? So something to kind of keep in mind whenever we have a lot of this wanton destruction is that, like, yes, it's representative of the character's power, but it's a little more metaphorical than it is beholden to the physical rules. That's why a character can get sliced and diced and eviscerated, and they're not dead. It's just a reflection of the damage they take, and it's more, again, metaphorical. Though there is like a literal physicality to it, because again, they bleed and it obscures their vision, things like that. Anyway, I do like this back and forth. I like that Ichigo's a little off-centered here, and we get Ikkaku centered. I think it gives us a really good sense of like Ichigo maybe not being in control in this encounter. I love the page turn immediately into Ikkaku getting very serious and then clashing. So again, it speaks a little bit towards that. I don't know how much you needed the after image of Zangetsu here. Zangetsu. Mostly because, like, I think Ichigo just having the sword put at the side to block would have told us enough. But, it works. It's just like, I think it's a little sketchy and rough. I think that the page would have worked otherwise anyway. It would have been perfectly readable. But here we're getting a little bit of Ikkaku actually using his Shikai, his Hozakimaru. And kind of a neat moment here is, if you're caught up in reading the speed of this page, it's like, okay, he takes this strike, Ichigo's knocking it aside, we can follow that action. Here comes Ikkaku to, thrust at him with the other end, right? And, they fly past each other, right? And it feels like this clash. That said, here we can catch the other end of Hozokimaru coming out, right? But if you notice, Ichigo actually catches the other end of the pole and rips it off right here. So, kind of neat, right? Clings it all together, immediately goes in for another strike as Ichigo's turning. But Ichigo goes in, takes the slash, and our man Ikkaku blocks it. But he can pull and whisk this around, so he whisks it, around and then slings, and it doesn't matter that Ichigo blocks because it's able to kind of come around, so he gets knocked back, right? But I love that. I love the spinning that he does. I think that's really cool. Just kind of speaks towards like a familiarity with his weapon. That said, this is such a strong moment from Ichigo, right? Where he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm already, used to your moves, and we get this great image here where he's ripped off a part of the Shikai of Hosokimaru, right? The released state of this weapon. Now my cats are fighting each other. Just taking a lot of inspiration from this chapter, huh? Cats, can you not? Come on, guys. Anyway, sorry to have to get on them during the recording and everything. I'm gonna leave that in there. That's for you. But I love that again. Kubo does take like these big, like whenever I talk about like the visuals in Bleach, I mean like effective fight choreography is that he spends this time like really close, intimate moments that are really pushed into the page. Usually we have an exchange per page, which is really nice. So like here, for instance, we have this clacking into grabbing his weapon. They both turn, like, Ichigo turns, Ikkaku's coming after him, Ichigo goes for the slash, right? So like we always have like this exchange inside of a page space, and usually it leaves us in this anticipatory, which when we get the answer in exchange, further on. But I love that we also get these very bombastic sort of character moments in there too that are very evocative. So we get Ichigo sort of schooling Ikkaku here, having that piece of his weapon and that zoom in, and because Ikkaku's been spinning it, maybe he didn't realize himself. But yeah, there's this realization, and this is such a strong and powerful moment. I think even more so because there is no background to distract from that. Now there's minor, there's not very much in the way of background in the rest of these. It's mostly speed lines and things like that. But specifically the entire stark whiteness of the background, the size of this image, the fact that I love that we get Ikkaku's eye like looking towards Ichigo, and then that little like glance over as he takes in the reality of what's happened. I love that just the way that this is presented, it makes it more dramatic. It makes it more significant a moment, and it's given the amount of amount of time and or space on the page to really sink in. And I love that we have to get to the next page as he stats back and Ichigo's already coming at him with this big flying slice. I love Ichigo takes this, he loves doing his big jump slice, his big over the head slice. That's getting a lot of momentum into these strikes with Zangetsu, which really are devastating. Again, Ichigo's speed gets brought back up, that he's very quick, and he comes down with, of course, this massive slash, and we see what happens with Ikkaku, like, as we follow in. I love that we get the shot of the blood splurting first, and then we catch the where he was going to block. You can see that it's chopped right through. And we still, I love that we get a whole page that's just reaction, that's just evocative before we actually see the depth of the wound on page turn. And it's, this could have been, this into this, no problem, like without this page. But this page builds up so much anticipation for, what's going to happen. I think that's, again, really strong, really masterful. And of course here, this only works so well because we've been seeing, just earlier in this chapter, right, we got Ikkaku blocking Zangetsu with the, the chain, right? So we're already used to that. That's already been established, so that payoff for that is that much more powerful here. But yeah, it really carved him from neck down to belly here, this huge slice. And I love that Ikkaku's still in the fight, right? He's still ready to go. And we really get this sense of his battle readiness, his determination. I also do like here that we do, as little as Kubo will often, or as often as Kubo gets flack for not including backgrounds, for being more character focused. I'd still like the acknowledgement of this background here in the shot of Ichigo. Again, where Ichigo might have started this chapter off center, now he is more centered, Now he is stronger and more present. And then, of course, we have the damage of the building there is what I was trying to kind of speak towards. We're reminded of his capability. Just as he sliced through this building, he sliced through Ikkaku, right? And so he's literally carving his way through the Ch.88. Pretty good stuff. Ikkaku discards one of the parts of his weapon, right? Which is kind of wild. You think he wouldn't do that, but here he goes. At least that's the way that I'm reading that, part of the claying ass, right? Um, but you know, he still has, I guess, the little like part of it, a piece of it. It's been sliced, but not, you know, it didn't slice at the chain. It's sliced here in the wood. I love that. Of course, he returns to that very violent sort of spinning, like that he's hunched over, you know, so it doesn't catch him. And his insistence of like, oh, you've got to fight to the very end. You got to cut off my arms, otherwise, how am I gonna ever, you know, drop this weapon? But I really do love Ikkaku's expressions here. We really get this sense of somebody who's very serious about the battle. I love how like sharp his pupils get, like to where they're like, almost like triangles. Uh, Ikkaku's just a very expressive character, and I do really enjoy this little battle that we have with Ichigo here. Um, you know, his this sense that it only ends whenever someone's dead, right? That this is a serious fight. And here we do actually have, you know, Ikkaku getting up on his toes, that little toe tip dance that he was doing earlier, perhaps is actually maybe, you know, a part of his actual fighting style. Who knew? I do like this shot of, you know, Ikkaku coming in, this interjected frame of Kisuke lunging in with Benihime, and then this closer panel of Ikkaku. Just like the way that this is laid out, reading like a reel of film, I think is really effective. Uh, Especially with, you know, we get the immediate payoff of like Ichigo's training has trained him for this point. Like Kisuke got him ready for exactly this kind of combat. And knowing that, of course, Kisuke was a captain, Kisuke would know how to train Ichigo in fighting against the sort of techniques Soul Reapers would maybe teach in their academy, right? So I think it's pretty pertinent. I think it's pretty smart, reminding us of Kisuke there. I think it's effective stuff. But also, I always love whenever manga does this kind of frame by frame stuff like this. It's maybe not as effective here as I've seen in other works, but I do still like it. Like that all the way down the page. If you want to look for a good one, the author of Chainsaw Man, I think it's Fujimoto. Pretty sure, like Tatsuki Fujimoto. Um, I'm thinking that's the guy's name. But if you go and read, he's got a one shot called "Goodbye Airy," and the entire thing is done to mimic like film, and you're supposed to read it on your phone as well. At least that's the way that I've interpreted it. I think it works best if you read it on your phone. So if you have a phone or a mobile device and you can read it like as a scroll, and you can just get this effect of like scrolling down through the reels, that's it's some good stuff. It's legitimately a masterpiece in my opinion. And I say in my opinion, I think it's just legitimately a masterpiece. I don't like you could argue otherwise, but I don't think that would be the truth. It's one of the best one shots I've ever read. So highly suggest it. I'll link to the Viz page for it, but I do believe that you need to be a Viz member to read it there. So if you find it somewhere else, good on you. But I will try to remember to link the Viz page for it in the episode description for this because I always want to turn people on to other stuff that they might like. But yeah, this style, this sort of filmic style, I think is really cool. Now, the way that I interpret this, I'm pretty sure this is a 2-page spread, that it is like split here. I could be wrong. I'd have to look at the actual volume, but I'm pretty sure that this is the case where this is a 2-page spread where we get them finally having this clash, and you can already see that. Interestingly enough, Ichigo has done this like up slice with Sengetsu and focused his attack instead on Ikkaku's weapon rather than on Ikkaku's body. Nevertheless, you know, still shreds his entire arm. I think Ichigo is well within his right to kill Ikkaku here. And maybe even Ikkaku realizes that as he, you know, expresses how good Ichigo is, uh, because Ikkaku, you know, is clearly outmatched. Of course, this is going to be the first of many triumphant Ichigo that we get to see. He is our protagonist after all, but Ichigo with the sword raised high, right? That's a fantastic sort of visual that we haven't gotten very much of lately. Or I say lately, as of this part of the manga. Whew, words, right? Anyway, Ikkaku returns to that notion of luck, right? That it was a thing of luck, and I think to an extent, maybe this allows Ikkaku to, you know, chalk things up to something that's outside of his control, right? So it's like, oh well, it's lucky that I ran into like an opponent and I get to get the the fortune of winning this battle, or like, oh, it's unlucky that you're so much stronger than I am, rather than, oh well, out of my own skill I found you, or out of whatever. Maybe like I feel like it's a way for Ikkaku to sort of feel more special when things go his way, and feel like maybe it's less of his fault whenever they don't. Um, but it's an interesting character sort of trait, nevertheless, that he's got this real focus on luck. And it's I think cute that it gets evoked here as he falls to the ground. Now, of course, Ichigo's wounds have bled through his Zanpakuto's wrapping. He's having kind of a difficult time himself, and so he speaks towards also being unlucky. And that's the end of our chapter, and we get the confirmation of course, this is Karakura Gold. As Don Kanoji is revealed to have decided that he is the main character, Karakura Gold. And I will say that is why I named this channel that. Not just to name myself after Don Kanoji, but the idea of, not just evoking this character in Bleach that's brings all these disparate characters together under his banner. Also, I like superhero stuff, so Karakura Gold is pretty cool. But I think the other thing that I wanted to kind of present is this idea of Bleach being, this series worth revisiting, right? The series worth making these videos on, and therefore it is gold in its own way. It is the Karakura Gold, as you will. So, yeah, evoking different senses of the use of the word gold, and Karakura as possessive of that, are gold being descriptive, whatever, adjective rather than a actual proper noun. But yes, Karakura Gold is Don Kanoji. And I love that they're arguing about who the main character is, and because they're both red, right? And then Don Kanoji, of course, is the main character because he's gold, an even cooler color. And Ururu over here is the saddest Ururu. Like, look at this Ururu. I love that, like, this is this like little omake, but it's almost like looks like drawn in like crayon. I don't know. There's a roughness to it that I really appreciate. And the simplicity of some of these designs. It's good stuff. Good stuff. But overall, this chapter, of course, Ichigo wasn't going to lose his first encounter, his first serious encounter that isn't just. Well, I say it's very serious encounter. I mean, he fights Jidambo, but like that was pretty one-sided, right? And then, he quote unquote fights Gin, but that was one-sided in the other direction, So like this is the first really like challenge that Ichigo's had where it's been a little bit more even. Now Ichigo still kind of won. I'm not going to say soundly or handily, but he still came out victorious. Nevertheless, because of course he's our protagonist. He's not always going to win. It's just that we can expect in most shonen battle manga that our protagonist is going to win most of the time. And the thing that makes it interesting is less, well, what's the outcome going to be, and more, how does he clutch this victory? The actual happening of it. And so I like this chapter because it does make the happening of it. It does make the choreography of the fight. It does make those moments of battle that much more kind of dynamic and interesting. Yeah. So all in all, solid chapter. I do quite enjoy it. I think it is a nice sort of action-y payoff to what we've been building up so far with Ikkaku. And it also speaks to a certain efficacy, or efficiency even, within Bleach, in that basically Kubo established this character, like, 2 chapters ago? Maybe 3? And got through this fight very quickly. And so, there's going to be some fights that inevitably will last longer. There will be arcs that will definitely see us in these kind of more long and winded fights, and typically shonen tends to have these battles that drag on and on and on, and you have to think about, like, okay, well, what's the appropriate length for a battle, and of course, the answer is, well, how significant is it to the narrative, right? Um, a battle with somebody like Ikkaku, who's just introduced, probably shouldn't be focused so much on as a battle with, let's say somebody that we've known for a while, like Byakuya or Renji, right? Inevitably, whenever there are clashes there, we can expect there to be a little bit more going on. Now, we have introduced these various captain characters, and so inevitably their battles are probably going to be a little bit longer too, if they're not a complete shutout like they were with Gin, where he literally shut Ichigo out of the Seirite. But we'll see what we see, right? Anyway, if you have any comments on this one, if you have anything that you noticed in the chapter, anything about the art that you want to talk about, anything non-spoiler, go ahead and let me know in the comments. I always love to discuss things further there. If you do have something to say spoiler-wise, make sure that you tag it as such. And speaking of spoilers, we're going to go ahead and get into talking about spoilers from this volume, or this chapter. What this chapter kind of foreshadows, or things that we might be able to pick up. I do like the 88 in Ichigo's shadow. I'm not going to really read too much into that, though it does make me think of Ichibei to an extent. Anyway, it reminds me, I'm thinking of Ichigo having infinite power, right? He has twice infinite power. But it reminds me of Kamen Rider O's, which is OOO, has a gag like that where they draw the infinity sign and they're like, oh, well, Kamen Rider has infinite power, but perhaps he has more than infinite power, and they put another O next to the infinity sign, so it's like the three O's. It's the cheesiest moment, and I think almost any Kamen Rider series, but it slays me. Nevertheless, don't think that was necessarily a Kamen Rider reference, nor is that any sort of spoiler. Of course, I like that Ikkaku calls Ichigo out for talking big, because he absolutely does. Interestingly enough, here we do get yet another damaged weapon, and I know that damaging people's Zanpakuto is kind of par for the course this early on, although it gets made a bigger deal out of later, especially people's Bankai getting damaged. But, yeah, I don't know. I always kind of read Hozakimaru, is it Hozoki? Oh boy. It's not coming to me. I always read Ikkaku's as one that kind of is a little bit more fragile. Not just because of how it's treated in this fight, where he literally discards part of it, that it's got these different segments and everything like that. But, it's even got the cap that pops off for him to get the medicine out, which, all that stuff is an element of it. But then also his Bankai feels kind of... Am I right in saying that it's kind of crumbly? That it like is meant to sort of break, but I don't know. Maybe I'm losing my mind. Let me know what you think about his Ikkaku's Zanpakuto. That I think there is this element of self-sacrifice, or of getting wounded and still keeping at the fight. That it reflects some element of Ikkaku's personality. I also do, I do think that the idea of luck being entwined in it, there's certainly if you think about how difficult it must be to wield a weapon like that, there's certainly a lot of prowess and skill, but also I gotta feel some amount of luck into where it's striking in the right place. So I don't know, or at the very least something he could chalk up the luck. But yeah, Ichigo's speed again getting highlighted, so it's no surprise whenever that becomes a significant element of his Zanpakuto, his release, his Bankai. Interesting enough, Ikkaku does hold the grip of his weapon all the way through this, right? We do get this first of many large chest cuts on a Soul Reaper. The same sort of cut is going to be returned to a lot of times, but for sure with Kenpachi, right? And then I think Ichigo gets similarly sort of bisected, so kind of hamburger style or whatever. Um, I do wish that there was like some element of Ikkaku becoming more lethal for having been wounded. I know he looks like a absolute badass right here, but I just wish some element of that Bankai was a little bit more highlighted here in the Shikai. But it is what it is. Maybe we could take this as he has a sort of determination or fierceness to fight despite his wounds. Uh, so much of this like fighting to the death mentality. And of course, I love that Ichigo, of course, is willing to extend that mercy to him. Um, yeah, I mentioned in my like kind of like my review or my discussion of the episode, but the idea that Kisuke would have probably taught Ichigo how Soul Reapers tend to fight, this lunge maybe being in their playbook, is one that I think is effective. Of course, Ikkaku would be a slower opponent to fight than Kisuke too, so I do like that Ichigo is able to read his movement even with one eye open. That's sort of it's the same sort. Left eye getting wounded comes up a lot, or just eyes getting wounded in general. Of course, Ichigo with the triumphant sort of the head, slices Ikkaku up the other arm, shatters his Shikai down to just the handle. Pretty overwhelming stuff. As you know, we come to find that what is it that Ichigo uses Ikkaku's medicine to cure them both. Now, I mentioned in an earlier episode that if Zangetsu is more reflective of Ichigo's Quincy powers, right, and that the darkness of the Almighty or Yuhabak, right, as Ichigo being descended and all of that. And then, regardless, the Zangetsu is here more a manifestation of Ichigo's Quincy side, that it being able to bind his arm and kind of keep him from bleeding was maybe representative or reflective of the Blut Vene that we got. But here we could see that he's bleeding through it, and it's because, and I will justify that too. It's because, of course, we know that the white part is maybe more representative of white, of Shirosaki, right? However we want to say his name. That's the one that I'd like to go with is, Shiro being white, Saki, Ichigo Kurosaki, Shirosaki. But, you know, anti-Ichigo, hollow Ichigo, whatever you want to call him, white is his name. But actually Zangetsu, right? The actual Zangetsu, which as we know becomes the pretty sure it becomes the sort of white blade that Ichigo has down the line, which has always been his sheath, right? And so it's neat here that it's something that he wraps around him, but it doesn't ultimately keep him from bleeding because it's more reflective of that Shinigami side of him. But also, Ichigo's really hurt, so like third or fourth level speculation aside, like we could just read this as like, yeah, man, Ichigo's bleeding through his wrappings. Of course, Cardcore Gold's great stuff, but you know this. You watch this entire video. This is gonna be a little bit of a shorter one, folks. As always, please do leave me a like if you made it to the end of the video. I do appreciate seeing that. Otherwise, if you'd like to support in a different way, you can always support me on Patreon. Right now on screen are all of my current supporters over there on Patreon. Thank you so much for your contributions. It really does help. And that's it for this episode. If there's something that you'd like to talk about more, again, leave a comment. I'm always open to responding to those. Just make sure that you tag the spoiler comments within, spoiler tags. Just say, hey, there's spoilers in this or spoilers before you make your comments so people can see that before they get spoiled. But, not that there's not a lot of substance here. There is this fight, and there is a lot of exciting back and forth. But this is going to be a shorter one, so I do appreciate you sticking through it. Nevertheless, it's still over 30 minutes, which I know isn't the easiest thing to sit and listen to in one sitting or to listen to while you're on the go. Regardless, that has been it for this episode of Bleach Revisited. This has been Cargo Gold, and I'm reminding you that spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.